Now people have to absolutely work two jobs. Not it's out of necessity at this point. So 400,000 people in the United States work two full-time jobs. That's 80 plus hours a week, and this is a failure. It's also a failure to have anything even close to the working poor in the United States of America. So these numbers come from the Bureau of Labor, which also found that in September of 2022, 4.9% of all the more than 1.64 million US workers held two or more job positions over 7.7 million workers. Michael at The Guardian does such a great job of laying this kind of stuff out for us. Now, this again, I want you to know is not for leisure, it is because they have to do it. But it gets worse because through US Census data, or though US Census data estimates these rates and numbers to be much higher at 7.8% in the most recent year where data is available, 2018, about 13 million workers, while BLS data at the time estimated 5.0% of the workforce holding multiple jobs. And it gets even more worse than that. I hate to build up on the worst part, but here it is. Both data sets are considered an underestimate of the number of multiple job holders in the US labor market due to constrictions on what is defined as a multiple job holder and the lack of data on self-employment such as the gig workers. That gig economy is kind of hard to keep up with workers in that. And many of these workers holding multiple jobs are doing so just to try to make ends meet. Again, they're not doing it for luxury reasons, they're doing it out of necessity. And we're going to highlight an individual just so we can paint this picture a little clearer. Cache Lewis, 31 of Denver, Colorado, works two jobs and is currently trying to find a third job to cover the recent $200 monthly rent increase to her apartment. She works days as a barista at Starbucks, but claims it's been difficult to get enough hours, even with taking extra shifts whenever she can due to scheduling cuts as part of the crackdown on union organizing by management. At night, she works at a convenience store because the hours are reliable and works 6 days a week, often 16-hour days. And again, Michael, thank you so much from The Guardian for highlighting this story. So a real one of our fellow folks sharing her story about what she has to do just to try to make ends meet. One job should be enough, but obviously, as we can see, it is not. What she went through is really tragic. Let's go further. I'm exhausted all the time. On the one day I have off a week, I donate plasma for extra money. I'm literally selling my blood to eat because I have no choice. Absolutely heartbreaking, but this is real. And she is not an exception to this story. There are millions of stories just like hers. We gotta do better in this country. This is a failure of the United States. Let's put up this graph. When we look at the cost of living, gas is up by 58%, used vehicles 31%, hotels 25%, meat, poultry, and fish 13%, furniture and bedding 11%, new vehicles 11%, domestic services 10%, jewelry 6%, electricity 6%, food 6%, apparel 5%, milk 4%, fruits and vegetables 4%. People need all of these things. This is real. And their dollars are not going as far. And most of this is due to corporate greed. Corporations charging more than what it costs for them to do business, overcharging more than what it costs for them to do business. But meanwhile, CEO pay has skyrocketed. Take a look at this. 1,322% since 1978. CEOs were paid 351 times as much as the typical worker in 2020. So please spare me this. We can't give the everyday working folks of this country a raise. Spare me that when the CEOs of this country, when their pay is skyrocketed by 1,322%. Ben, this really gets my blood boiling.
Yeah, I mean, it's really infuriating because I mean, first and foremost, the gig workers thing. That's like Isn't that most people who have a second job or doing like Uber or Lyft or something like that, they're doing some type of gig work. So if that's where there's missing data and that's where they're having a hard time keeping track of things, well then, like, I got news, this is probably a severe undercount, especially when you touch on like all of the different factors that, like, I mean, like, let's be real. The programs that at one point in time existed to help working class poor folks in the United States that were completely gutted, right? That were completely gutted. The means testing levels on all those things hasn't changed in like a really long time. And when it changes, it doesn't change by very much, which means that like working class folks who are not like surviving at all, that are just living in absolute poverty, still don't qualify for like a lot of these programs. And then when you talk about affordable housing, you realize that a lot of the income requirements basically make those a poverty trap, right? Where you're not allowed to make any more money. I mean, quite literally, I remember growing up. My mom, to be clear, had 6 kids. My mom had 6 kids and she was terrified. She had to turn down a 25-cent raise because it would have disqualified us from the free lunch program. It would have disqualified us for the free lunch program and it would have cost her hundreds of dollars. And so of course people are working 2-3 jobs. The reason why people are working 2-3 jobs is because there's no support. There's just nothing, right? And like, if you go to like red states, there's even less than nothing. Like, it quite literally is more costly to be poor. You're gonna pay more in groceries because those average inflation numbers don't account for the fact that prices are gonna be higher in areas where it's harder to get groceries, right? If you're gonna live in the rich side of town, you might have like these surplus stores with discount prices and all these things. But if you're not living in the rich side of town, then all you might have is a gas station and a Dollar General, and you better hope that there's some sort of type of like fruits or vegetables in that gas station, right? Like, that's the position that working class folks are in right now, but rich people couldn't be richer. And that's just what's so infuriating about the state of our economy at this point, because people don't have the time to live. I mean, heck, feudal peasants got an average of 6 months vacation, right? We are literally working more like grueling hours than the average feudal peasant did 700 years ago.
Yeah, picture that. And the fact that people's quality of life, I mean, as she shared, she's exhausted all the time. You can't enjoy life that way. That is not what life is supposed to be about. But somehow in this country, we believe that working class people, which is the majority of people, some of us are at the top of that. But if you don't have a trust fund, if you are not in that ultra wealthy category, you work for a living. Working class people who find themselves in that similar position where they can't even enjoy their lives, there is absolutely something wrong with that in a hegemon nation as the United States of America. So the windfall profits tax, I mean, that would help solve some of this gouging that is happening by these CEOs and these companies. I want to put up this headline very quickly. The lowest paid workers saw their CEOs make 670 times their salaries last year, all while inflation canceled out their raises. In other words, inflation is rising higher than what the raises are. I think the average worker may have gotten a little over 5% raise. Inflation is at about 8.3%. So really workers have taken a loss. And if you want to find out more about this kind of stuff, please follow Dr. Robert Reich on all of his social media. He is an economist. He was the labor secretary under President Clinton, and he breaks this down to the fundamentals. And he is absolutely a champion for all working class people in this country. We're gonna keep pushing on this.